So what does it take to build a startup? 1. A killer idea or maybe a decent idea. 2. A team that can execute the idea really, really well. 3. Some capital or maybe lots of capital depending on how you want to execute. 4. Big market. And 5th, and this is a point that most people miss, is pure play timing. Today, in our story, we are going to learn how these 5 factors enabled a company to have a widespread impact around the world. It not only impacted its users, but it also gave birth to new set of business models that before this startup did not even exist. Yes, so this is a cab aggregator company, and today we are going to talk about Uber. It was a snowy night. Great, but take us to Paris. Yeah. So it was a snowy night in Paris. Garrett Camp, along with Travis Kalanick and some of their friends, they were trying to find a cab. They could not find a cab, and out of frustration, it was exactly the Apple and Newton moment where gravity was discovered. Garrett Camp thought that why can't we have a simple app where by pressing a button we can request a driver? It seems so obvious in 2024, but this was 2008 and App Store and Play Store was just born. Right? And thinking of an idea where someone can request a cab by just pressing a button and a cab would show up from a fleet of cars was like a great idea. But what is an idea without execution? But before we go into Uber's execution, let's just understand what the world used to look like before Uber. So the world prior to Uber, requesting a cab or even getting a driver to pick you up was very difficult. Depending on the city you are in. Imagine you are in Bangalore and it starts to rain and there's no Uber. You would go on the road and try to find a taxi, or you would just do a show of hand, try to find a cab driver to come and pick you up. But it would be so hard. Let's say you are in Bombay or in a tier 2 city. Getting a cab driver was always hard depending on what time of the day it is, depending on which area you are in, whether the area is isolated, far away from the city, etc., and the list can go on and on and on. Women's safety was also a big deal when you used to find a cab prior to the Uber era. Now, the problem statement was clearly there. And in fact, even if the driver would show up, you now have to negotiate a lot with the driver to get onto a price. You were not sure about the quality of the car that would pick you up, whether the car is hygienic or not hygienic, what the driver profile actually is. So clearly, Uber standardized all of these things in a massive way. So the problem statement was established. The hook to get the customer onto the platform was already there because the problem statement itself was really big. But let's understand how the team got together to solve for this problem statement. Now, Uber had to build this dream team. But before we get onto the team, let's understand what Uber actually had to battle, which will tell us what kind of characters in the team were actually needed. Now, there's something called as cab mafia that Uber had to battle, and this cab mafia, it used to exist in every major city across the globe. Let's just understand ये cab mafia होता क्या है. So generally in a cab mafia, there's a leader, and often under that leader there are a bunch of drivers which further control a lot of taxis that run or operate in a particular area in a city. Generally, this total group is actually a monopoly operating in a particular area, and they usually form a company. They often have ties to the local authorities, and because of that, it's very difficult to displace them. As per the New York City and Limousine Commission, there were 13,000 drivers operating in the New York City, and often customers used to complain about these drivers a lot in terms of long detours or fare disputes. And when Uber had to enter the city, often these drivers would go on to a strike in an attempt to halt the city's transportation system. And because they had strong ties to the local authorities, they would act as a huge hindrance in Uber's expansion. अब आप imagine करो, आप एक startup founder हो, and you are sending your team to expand in a particular city, but आपकी team injured वापस आ रही है office because उनको किसी ने पत्थर मार दिया. This is exactly what used to happen with Uber's expansion team when they would go and expand in a particular city. Not only this, because of ties with local authorities, these cab mafias would often drag Uber to court in an attempt to halt their operations again. आप guess कर सकते हो कि Uber ने कितने court cases लड़े होंगे? Let me give you a rough idea. Uber is today, as of today, operates in more than 10,000 cities across the globe. मतलब यहाँ पे एक case हो जाए, there's a lot. It sucks so much energy out of you, gives you so much negativity. But 10,000 cities में expand करना, मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ that Uber fought 10,000 court cases, but there would have been so many of these court cases. Now imagine what sort of team character and leadership character traits that were needed to fight all of these battles in order to build Uber to what it is today. Now, For a company like this, a leader was needed who can see beyond all of these things and just focus on the end goal. And that is where Travis Kalanick played a huge role. Now, great leaders don't focus on problem statement, but they focus on problem solving. Travis Kalanick was one such leader. Garrett Camp met Travis Kalanick in an event. Travis had just sold his last company, Red Beacon, for $19 million, and he was looking for his next challenge. When Garrett approached Travis, they were both ready to execute on the vision of Uber. Travis was already known for his aggressive approach and risk-taking mindset. Apart from that, Travis brought several traits on board that were very, very advantageous for Uber. 1. He had tremendous risk-taking capability and an aggressive scaling mindset. Second, he was a rule breaker. Third, operationally, he was a hustler. And fourth, he was a marketing genius. All of this played to Uber's advantage. Apart from this, Garrett Camp himself sold his last company, Stumbled Upon, for $75 million to eBay. So he bought the vision of building a company from a long-term perspective on the table. Apart from the other team members, there were two other key members in the team, Ryan Graves and Austin Kite. They both handled operations and expansion of Uber. वो जो मैंने स्टोन पेल्टिंग की बात की थी ना, वो यही टीम थी एग्जैक्टली, जो जाके कैब माफिया के अगेंस्ट खड़ी होती थी और ऊबर को एक्सपैंड करती थी. In fact, Austin Kite joined Uber as an intern and went on to contribute at such a level that she ended up becoming head of expansion and strategy at Uber later on. If you also believe in the future of a company and you think that the company can become actually big, you should join that company now and contribute from a long-term perspective so that you can yourself grow with that company. Now let's come to Uber itself. Let's talk about drivers acquisition. अगर cab mafia इतना difficult था, so how did Uber actually acquire drivers? So they came up with an aggressive incentive policy for the drivers. Not only that, they basically promised drivers fixed monthly and annual salaries so that drivers can envision a promising future outside of the cab mafia that enabled drivers to sign up with Uber. Second, Travis and team, they created an illusion of availability in front of the customers. In a particular area, cab drivers would always be available in abundance so that customers can request a driver at any point in time. Even if that took the driver to not do any rides and Uber paying the driver from their own pockets, Travis was okay with that. Uber had this crazy product inside where they saw after 3 to 4 Uber rides, they had the customer forever. So that is where they launched a program to sponsor the first 3 to 4 rides of any customer who would join Uber so that the customer would not later on uninstall Uber. Lastly, Travis was a marketing genius. What he did was he used all the court cases and controversies to his advantage and positioned Uber as a disruptor in the space. And he used to say, you know what, Uber is not a tech company, it's a freedom company. अब ये सब करने के लिए पैसे कहाँ से आएंगे? Obviously, Uber was based in US and raised a lot of funding from the investors. It raised $25 billion from the investors, and guess what? It is more than the GDP of Croatia. Now, I have spoken about idea, problem statement, the team, the capital that is needed at length. But let's talk a bit about timing. Why Uber's timing was so important for Uber to become Uber. Whenever you are building a startup, there are certain prereqs that have to happen so that your startup can become big. In Uber's case, let's talk about some of these prerequisites. 1, the internet had to exist. 2nd, smartphones have to be there. Smartphone adoption has to be there, number 3. Number 4, Play Store and App Store has to be there so that it can support an app like Uber. Number 5, backend infrastructure was needed so that the compute was such that it can scale really, really well when Uber would get a lot of traffic on board. 6th is access to capital. Imagine Uber was not launched in a country like US. Access to capital would not have been that easy, because of which Uber would not have become Uber. 7th is founder market fit itself. Imagine Travis was not a risk taker or Travis was not a rule breaker. तो कौन लड़ता कैब माफिया से? या फिर who would have actually fought all those court cases without giving up? So founder market fit becomes really, really important. Next time when you are evaluating your own startup idea, just remember that there are certain prereqs that your startup idea has to meet, and only then you should consider launching your startup. And pure play timing itself can be evaluated by seeing the past, where you are sitting right now, and few years down the line in the future. If you think your idea is the future of the market and the timing and all the prereqs are getting met, and whether or not you want to raise funds, तो ही आप अपना स्टार्टअप लॉन्च करो. In Uber's case, if access to capital was not there, Uber would not have been able to incentivize the drivers so aggressively. Uber would not have been able to give free rides to its customers also. So it becomes very, very important. Now, before we continue, I have to talk about the importance of team building at the right time, which will decide the fate of your startup. And timing is also very, very important. Now, if you're a company who's looking to hire tech talent so that your company can grow a lot, and at the right time, you should explore platforms like Intervue. Intervue is a platform where you can get all your candidates interviewed within few hours using engineers of your choice by choosing the right criteria of your choice, and ultimately you can get hundreds of candidates interviewed within just few hours and get access to detailed reports of their candidates, and the reports will tell you if the candidates are a yes or a no. Along with that, you'll also get video recording of the entire round. Now, interesting stat, out of every 100 interviews that Intervue takes, 86% of the candidates turn out to be a no, which means you will at least save 86 hours of engineering bandwidth that is going into interviewing itself. The remaining 14% candidates you can take forward in the process and close your hiring at a 70% faster rate than any other platforms out there. Secondly, if you are a candidate who's looking out for jobs, you can go on the platform, choose an engineer of your choice and take a mock interview. This mock interview will help you prepare for the next job by understanding all the technical prereqs that are required for the next job. You will also get access to a detailed report along with a complete recording of the round. Coming back to Uber's story, not everything was hunky-dory with Uber. Uber was surrounded by a lot of controversies. One of them was the controversy with cab mafia. In case of cab mafia, obviously Uber had to face a lot of legal battles. Second was grey ball scandal, which is a pretty crazy story in itself. Uber के engineers ने एक ऐसा tool बनाया जो local authorities को restrict कर देगा Uber को ढूंढने से. How they did that was using geofencing. Geofencing को use करके they detected the location from where the request is coming. If the location was nearby a local authority office, they would restrict that request. Secondly, they even mapped social media profiles of these users and credit card information of these users so that these users cannot request Uber. And when it came to light, it became a crazy scandal. Third, toxic internal work culture. Uber was known for aggressive work practices and long working hours and everything that surrounds the startup. Over and above that, a blog post from Susan Fowler got a lot of popularity where she blamed Uber's management's incapability to address internal harassment that she had to face while being in the company. Because of all of these unfortunate incidents, Travis Kalanick was forced to exit the company, and 2017 Uber had the new CEO Dara. Now let's talk a bit about Uber scale. Today, Uber operates in 70 countries across 10,000 cities across the world, has 131 million active monthly users, and does, as per September 2024, they did a revenue of more than $42 billion. As of year 2020, Uber completed 10 billion trips worldwide, which is an amazing figure in itself. Not only this, as I stated earlier, Uber not only helped its users solve a big problem statement, but also gave birth to new sort of business models. This business model was called Uber for X, where companies like Uber for food deliveries like Uber Eats, Zomato, DoorDash were born, and Uber for stays, companies like Airbnb was born, which in itself, standalone, are billion-dollar companies. Similar to that, Intervue is also Uber for interviews, where you can actually get your candidates interviewed using engineers of your choice. Now, before I end this video, I actually want to talk about few learnings that we have from Uber. Number one, the idea itself. The idea itself was so great that it solved for a genuine and a big problem statement that helped the company achieve word of mouth virality. Second, the team. Imagine Travis Kalanick was not there, or Garrett Camp, or Ryan Graves, or Austin Guide. इनमें से कोई भी नहीं होता तो शायद Uber ही नहीं होती. Third was the market size itself. The market size itself allowed Uber to expand across 70 different countries, and it allowed Uber to achieve the scale that it was able to achieve. Fourth is access to capital. Imagine access to capital was not there. Then Uber would not have been able to incentivize their drivers. Neither they would have been able to give free rides to their users in order to gather users at the first place. Fifth is the pure play timing itself. All of these factors contributed to the success of Uber. Now, if you are a startup founder who's looking to launch their own company, then you should take care of all these 5 factors before you actually start building your idea itself, which will allow you to have a larger perspective whether your company will be successful or not. To continue to watch content like this and get value out of it, subscribe to our channel Intervue with Rahul Arora. Please like, share and comment on this video, and I'll see you in the next one.